Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk to you about computer science across the curriculum, the what, the why, and the how. And this is just the first video in this series. So today I'm just going to kind of do a broad overview about why it's important to integrate computer science. What is computer science? What do we mean by integration? And a little bit of some easy ways of how to do that. Next week, there'll be another video, part 2 of this series of computer science across the curriculum, and that will be talking a little bit deeper into some specific examples in various content areas. So, hello everyone. My name is Holly Graffam, and I am an MLTI ambassador working through the Maine Department of Education. And I have included my contact information here. Below the video in the description area, there'll be a link to a PDF file of this presentation. And so you'll be able to access these links or any other links that are provided throughout the presentation. So why integrating computer science is critical? First of all, if we look at this happens to be from LinkedIn, but there are other sources with similar lists about the skills companies are looking for in their employees in 2020. We can look to see that the top three of the top 5 interpersonal skills and 5 of the top 10 technical skills. So half the skills that employers are looking for are covered here, and these are deeply embedded within computational thinking and computer science learning. And secondly, we now live in a very global world, and to be globally competitive, students are going to need computer science skills. And if we look at this map of computer science education across the globe, you can see that we are in yellow, and the countries that we are competing with are in the blue areas where computer science is mandatory at some point in time during their students' education. Whereas in the United States, it's available in some places and not in others. So by integrating computer science in our curriculums is one way that we can help create equity across the country and making sure that all our students have access to these computer science skills. If we look specifically here in Maine, we'll see that 71% of the new STEM jobs, are in computing, but 8% of STEM graduates are in computer science. So this needs to be a real push of students understanding the value in computer science education and the related fields. For instance, in Maine, they're currently, and these statistics here in the blue state are ones from December in 2021, so not too long ago, but don't hold me to these exact numbers because they may have changed. But at that time, there were a little over 1,400 open computing jobs in the state with an average salary of almost $82,000. But there was only 152 graduates in computer science in 2018, and only 60% of our high schools in Maine teach a foundational course in computer science. Obviously, though we need those foundational courses to give students the skills and the confidence that they need to go ahead and take computer science once they get into higher learning. And only 300 exams were taken in AP Computer Science by high school students in May 2020, and it just broken out into the 2 different types of AP. So again, we need to make sure that we are offering those opportunities for our students because that's where the jobs and the money are. And while I've just been talking a lot about high school, what we really need to do, and this is where the integrating into your curriculums part really comes into play, is that we need to start in elementary school. And I've laid out 4 different quotes here from various sources about why we need to start this in elementary school. And basically, if we look at computer science, it's very much a language. Well, not all of computer science is about coding, but coding is a big part of computer science, and coding is a language. We know that students, young students, learn foreign languages better. And so if we think of coding as a foreign language, we can see that younger students would be more advantageous to teach that to them. Um, Plus, we need to form positive attitudes about computer science and STEM subjects. And the elementary years are where that critical positive attitude is going to come from. If we want students in high school to be taking these AP computer science courses and then moving on into, you know, post high school graduation computer science fields uh, and majors, then we need to make sure that they have this really positive feeling around computer science and STEM. And that also makes sense that the earlier we introduce these skills, the more confidence and the greater amount of skill ability students are going to have. It's just like any other coursework. I mean, we wouldn't say, okay, we're going to not introduce any math skills until somebody was in middle school. No, we recognize that there's a building to mastery in these things. And computer science is no different than other content areas in that way. And so the earlier that they can gain some of the fundamental computer science skills and fluency, the greater chance we have to reach them into the more advanced um, ideas and concepts and make them more college ready for those topics. So, why integrated units that include computational thinking and computer science concepts are needed? And I will get into a little bit about the link of computational thinking to computer science, but 73% of our principals here in Maine believe that computer science is just as important or more important than other core classes. But the biggest barrier to offering computer science is the lack of funds for hiring and training teachers. Maine does not have at this time a clear certification pathway for computer science teachers. And what we know is that we need, if we want this to happen, particularly in the elementary school grades, we need to have some pre-service um, computer science coursework that these young soon-to-be teachers can take. And it's right now is not a required that all high schools in Maine offer computer science. So we are not at a place yet. I think that is a goal, and we are striving. We're making lots of gains and striving for that. But until we get to that point, we can't say, "Oh, well, let's not do anything with computer science." Now, one of the things that we can do to help push the needle forward until we meet some of these goals is to incorporate these concepts into curricular that we're already teaching in our classroom. So, exactly what is computer science and what computer science and principles and concepts can we integrate? Because we're not talking about all of them. And So, what is computer science? It's the study of computers and algorithm processes, their principles, their designs, their applications, and their impact on society. So that's sort of the official um, definition, if you will, by computer science offered up by the CSTA, which is the standard barrier for computer science education here in the United States. And Code.org, which is a nonprofit organization that has really made it its mission to move computer science forward in the country as a whole. Uh, there have been many other organizations, but this is one that many people are familiar with, and their definition is learning how to use the power of computers to solve problems. And that problem solving is really where we can capitalize on the integration of computer science in our classrooms. So, what integration is not? So, in this presentation, I am not going to be advocating or talking about how you can implement a computer science curriculum into your classroom. That's not integration. Although you may include some traditional computer science lessons along the way, I certainly am passionate um, and advocate that all schools at all levels have some sort of computer science opportunities for their students, but that curriculum is separate from what we're talking about here with integration. So what we're really talking about is how can we incorporate the computational thinking skills? How can we incorporate some of the practices, concepts, and vocabulary of computer science in authentic and meaningful ways? And most importantly, how can we be explicit about the computational thinking and computer science connections? So, computational thinking. I have done a previous video on computational thinking, and later in the slide deck, there'll be a link to that. So, if you want to go back and do a deeper dive into computational thinking, but basically, it's a thinking process students use to define, analyze, and explore open ended problems in order to generate solutions. This should look really familiar to many, many teachers. These are the four elements of computational thinking: decomposition, pattern recognition, abstraction, which means finding the most important aspects of something and being able to distinguish that from the least important aspects of something, and algorithms. So these, you're probably hopefully sitting there already saying, well, I do all of that in my classroom already. And that's the point. You are already integrating these things into your classroom. Now we just need to be a little bit more explicit about their connections to computer science. And so I'm going to go back one more about computational thinking. Computational thinking is like the foundational skills of computer science. You have to have that thinking process, that problem solving thinking process in order to really um, dive deeply into computer science, because computer science is about solving problems using computers. So there are some computer science frameworks and standards out there that you may be familiar with. And these are sort of the big three. And when we look at ISTE, they talk about computer science with their computational thinking, but they're really technology standards in general. So they include things like digital literacy, citizenship and design, computer literacy. And computer literacy is very distinct from being computer science. Computer literate means I know how to turn a computer on. I know how to select which program I'm going to use. I can make a video. All of those things are computer literacy, but they are not computer science. And then obviously computational thinking. Then there is the K-12 framework, and this is just what it sounds like. It's a framework, it's a narrative form of the computer science concepts and practices for various grade bands. By the end of, grade 2, students should have an understanding around this, and it's very much in a narrative form. It's not um, as specific as the CSTA standards. And so these are the what we look at traditionally for standards. Students will be able to fill in the blank there. There are very specific standards for computer science concepts and practices that students should be able to perform at the various grade bands. So I really look at this as a funnel where ISTE is technology in general, but has some computer science in the form of computational thinking. And I will advocate also the innovative designer. Then we have the framework, which is more specific about computer science and what concepts and practices students ought to be learning about. And then the CSD standards, which are the very specific students ought to be able to do this. So how can we integrate? Well, we can start out with computational thinking and the innovative designer with ISTE. So let's start out with the broad things. So I've talked a little bit again about computational thinking. These are the foundational skills for using computing as a tool to assist problem solving. And I've got a couple different quotes here around computational thinking and its connection and its importance to developing computer science skills. And then also, this is where we're going to bring in the innovative designer, which is really about engineering design or the design thinking process or the problem solving process. I have not linked that video in, but I do also have a previous video about the design thinking process or processes, and the engineering design is one of those. And you can see here in this graphic, I've really highlighted where the 4 computational thinking elements, where do those intersect when you are using the engineering design process. So one easy way to be thinking about integrating computer science skills, if you will, into your classroom is just starting to think about computational thinking and maybe using the engineering design process, because that really hits all of those computational thinking skills in one one project, if you will. The other way that we could do this is through vocabulary connections when we're talking to students. Maybe you've seen the term debugging, and that's a very computer science driven term. And I've just listed, this is not an extensive list. These are just some common terms that you might be able to use that are not so specific to computer science that they can't be translated into some other content areas. And so debugging is the process of determining problems in your programming code or algorithm and fixing them. So I mean, there's lots of times where we talk about, how to go back and find where the issue is in students' learning. And so it might be, for example, a student has an incorrect math problem, and you might be, okay, let's debug this problem, which means we're going to go back, we're going to go step by step to find out where we went wrong along the way to solving this problem, because the solution is not matching the solution that we know to be the correct answer. So at that time, this is where a great opportunity to say, hey, did you know that the term debugging comes from computer science? And I've offered a little video here. This could be a time to talk about Grace Hopper, where kids love this story, where she actually, so the term bugging, finding a bug in a program, really predated the Grace Hopper incident, but um, she kind of really it kind of popularized it. So where Grace actually finds a moth, a bug, stuck to a tape, and she has to remove the moth from the computer tape in order for the computer program to continue working. This is back in the day, back in the 40s. And so you might do a little research on Grace Hopper. Kids love that story, right? The next one is is algorithm. And obviously we talk a lot about that in math, but I wanted to show you a different example. So an algorithm is anytime you're following a step-by-step directions or a procedure for a specific task. So think about haiku. Haikus have a very specific step that you have to take in order to make it a haiku, right? Um, or if you're conducting a lab experiment, there's a very specific procedure to follow, a step-by-step directions. Math, I think, is obvious. We talk about algorithms all the time in math, and there's others. You might, if you happen to be studying government and civics, it could be the process of a bill becoming a law. Like there are very specific steps, an algorithm, if you will. And so that's when you might talk about what is an algorithm. Did you know that that's what happens in computer science? When we say algorithm, we're talking about the step-by-step directions that you would write in a program in order to make a computer do whatever it is that you want it to do. So those vocabulary connections are things that happen. I'm not talking about creating another lesson. It's about capitalizing off of the opportunity of using a computer science vocabulary term and connecting it to something that students already know about, activating some of that prior knowledge, and making those connections with computer science. Some other things that you can do. So I've outlined the 5 concepts of the framework, and what are some connecting topics that you might talk about. So computing systems, it's one of the parts of computing systems is human computer interactions, the advantages, disadvantages, and the unintended consequences. I see a lot of current event work that you could talk about with this. I see some real social connections that you could talk about, advantages and disadvantages, and just start. If you're going to be talking about those things anyway, or you're doing a current event, within your classroom, why not bring something in about computer science? Again, something you're already doing, but you're going to integrate computer science. Networks and the internet. This is great to talk about cybersecurity, protecting your personal data, huge current topical conversations that you can be having with students. Data analysis. So you could use data visualizations, infographics. How do those infographics, where does the data come from? How do you use computers to take large data sets and put them into these graphics that are easily digestible. Predictions and simulations based on data set. So anything you're doing around data, there are some computer science connections there. Algorithms and programming. Again, talking about programming is a language. Some of the vocabulary terms I've talked about, loops and variables, conditionals. So those are the if this, then that, or if this is true, do this. If this is false, do that. Kind of choose your own adventure type of things. There's lots of ways to just be explicit. Did you know that this is also in computer science? And then the impacts of computing is really about, you can really make a lot of digital citizenship connections here about the cultural, social, and those types of impact of computing. So that's all I have for this particular session. Thank you for spending a little bit of your time with me. And if you go into the PDF and go to this last slide, you'll see that there's a way for you to go ahead and click on the yellow here, and that will take you to a form that you can complete. It has like 2 questions on it to get your point 0.5 contact hour. I hope that you join me next week when we take a deeper dive into some very specific ways of integrating computer science and into very different content areas. Again, if you're looking at, if you see computational thinking is a real pathway for you for integrating computer science, then I suggest you go and look at my computational thinking video. And that slide deck has a lot of very specific examples of integrating, of how computational thinking already exists in your current content areas, and how you can just be more explicit about those connections. So thank you and have a great day.